Welcome to Homegrown Florida. I'm Katrina, and today we are going to be canning up some spaghetti sauce with meat according to the National Center of Home Food Preservation's recipe. But first, I wanted to show you what kind of led into all of this. And so I'm starting with all of the harvests that I got from my tomatoes this last spring. I desperately needed to grow tomatoes because before I knew it, and without even, I guess, noticing, I took a look at my pantry and I was like, oh my goodness, we're down to one spaghetti sauce, one can of whole diced tomatoes, and a couple of salsas. And I'm like, that's not going to last us long. It got so bad in the pantry that I actually had to go buy spaghetti sauce for the first time in years. I can't even tell you how many years it's been since I had to buy spaghetti sauce, salsa, canned tomatoes, any of those products, because I've been growing my own and then canning it. Well, the pantry was pretty bare and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go big. I'm gonna grow a lot of different tomatoes. I grew 20 plus, maybe 40, somewhere between 20 and 40 tomato plants in my small backyard garden. And to add to the complexity, I also wanted to make sure that I could test out different colors. That was a goal of mine for 2025, which was to try out different unique either varieties or colors, just to see what's really possible down here in Florida in terms of varieties. So with this season of tomatoes, I grew orange ones, I grew yellow ones, I grew green ones, the traditional red and pink, these, which was an indigo kumquat, which is kind of like a purple orange, just all kinds of tomatoes in all kinds of colors and all kinds of flavors, all kinds of sizes. I mean, I really got pretty wild with the different ones. I wanted to do this for a couple reasons. One, I hadn't grown a lot of different kind of color or size tomatoes. I've kind of been sticking to the same ones that are just encouraged for our area. I wanted to find new things, so that did mean that I ended up having to start a lot more than I anticipated from seed and grow them out, and not a lot of them made them past the seedling stage, not a lot of them made them past the transplant stage. It really became pretty aware to me that Florida is a unique climate, and even though tomatoes love warm weather, they don't necessarily always love our humidity, our disease, our pest, our heat. Like, they don't all love that. So there was a lot of trial and error this season with growing all these different tomatoes. I did end up with an amazing crop of tomatoes, which I was very, very proud of. I want to do it again, but this time with, even more that I've had success with in the past. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can watch that going forward. Notice here in the video, I was actually picking these when they were at the blush stage. I did a whole video, you'll have to check that out, where I did tomato taste testing of a green tomato versus a blush tomato versus a fully vine ripened tomato. I brought the green and the blush inside and I let it ripen on my countertop, and then I taste tested them to see if there was any difference in taste and whether it made sense to pick them early. And I won't spoil it for you because I think it's a really fun video and it was a really interesting taste test. But I did start picking a lot of my tomatoes at the blush stage, where you see some of the pink, some of the red, some of the coloring of the tomato, and then I brought them inside to finish ripening. This helped make sure that I didn't get a lot of disease on the plant. It also kind of reduced the chances that squirrels and leaf foot bugs and stink bugs could get their hands on my tomatoes, which really increased my crop for the year. Next up, once they all started to ripen, I needed to do something with them because I wasn't ready to do a big tomato project at that time. I just didn't have them all. They were all ripening at different times. So I just stick them in a gallon-sized bag and then I stick them in my freezer. And when I'm ready, which is today, I pull them out. Now you could do one of two methods here, which is you could just let them thaw overnight in your sink. I didn't think about that ahead of time. So I got my Instapot out. I put a tiny bit of water in the bottom of it and I just pressure cooked it for 20 minutes just to take them from that frozen state to, a soft state that I could then put through my food mill. Now, if you just let them thaw in the sink overnight, you could probably get rid of all of the extra water that you know, that tomato water that's in the bottom, but instead I didn't do that, and because of that I end up having to cook mine for a lot longer. So it's kind of a little bit of a trade-off. Be very proactive in getting your tomatoes thawed in the sink, or you're gonna have to cook it longer later. Now this right here is one of my favorite products for making my tomato sauce, because I don't like to peel and de-seed my tomatoes. I don't want to deal with that. So a lot of the times I will just start cooking them, and then I put them through this food mill. This food mill takes off all the skins and gets rid of probably about 90% of the seeds. Now you've probably seen food mills done differently, like attached to KitchenAid blenders, or I don't know, the ones that kind of hook to the side of a countertop. This is kind of like the old school kind. They make these, you can use them to do the tomato sauce, you can use them to make applesauce. It's a little old school, it's a hand crank situation, but I particularly like it. You know, there's less that can go wrong with these. In this particular model, I found was the most productive of any of the ones that I've used in the past. So I'll make sure to put this down in the description so that you know how and where to get this. I end up doing it in batches, because if you put too much in there, it has a hard time getting all of the tomato pulp out. But it took me a couple minutes, maybe about 30 minutes to get through all that. And then I take all of the juice and the tomato pulp and all of that wonderfulness, and I put it in a pot and I cook it on my stove pretty much all day. Makes the house smell wonderful. If you don't want to have to be babysitting a stove, you could also put it in like a roaster pan or a crock pot on high, but then make sure to leave the top off, because you do want it to boil off some of the excess water so that it gets that thickness that we like on a tomato sauce. Now there's two ways that you can spaghetti sauce. You can can it with meat and you can can it without. When you're doing it without meat, you can use a water bath canning method. You do have to add a little bit of lemon juice to it, according to the National Center of Home Food Preservation. I'll put that link down below as well. If you haven't gotten into pressure canning yet, that is probably the way to go. It is one of the easiest ways to get your canning journey started. But I like to have the meat already actually in my sauce, and I feel like pressure canning takes about the same amount of time as water bath canning, in my opinion, especially using the Presto electric pressure canner that I'm going to show you here in a bit. It's so hands-off. I just feel like it's so much easier than having a pot of water boiling on the stove, or I don't know. I prefer it. I also like just having the meat. So the one thing you definitely want to do is drain off any of the fat. I just did that. I kind of stepped away for a second and drained that off, and then put it back on the stove. The next part of the recipe for the pressure canned recipe, I think the water bath canned recipe also allows you to add some low acid foods. Things like peppers, garlic, and onions traditionally are not things that you can water bath can. You traditionally have to either pickle them or you have to pressure can them. But when it's mixed with so much tomato product, it brings down the overall acidity, and that's why it is safe to water bath can those things. But you do have to follow the recipe. The recipe is incredibly important. It is tested, it is safe, and as long as you follow that recipe, follow the volumes on that recipe, you are good. The only variation, I know once I say follow the recipe, but then I say I'm going to do a variation. I know how that's going to sound, but I do remove one item from the list in the recipe, which is mushrooms. Once again, that's a low acid food, so if I'm removing it, all I'm doing is improving the acidity level, so I feel fine with that. But I did do the peppers. I went with sweet peppers. You could also do hot peppers if you like a more spicy sauce. You can kind of use them interchangeably. And then I did my garlic and my onions, but I skipped out on the mushrooms. I'm not a fan of mushrooms, especially not in my spaghetti sauce. And it turned out wonderful. I cut down the garlic and the onions and the peppers into like a really fine mince, almost like a small dice to a mince, because I really want it to blend into the sauce. I don't want a chunky sauce. Of course, if you want a chunky sauce, you could totally do that, but I actually like it all to like blend together to the point that you can't really tell any distinguishable pieces, so that's why I chop it down super fine. Once my tomato sauce has reduced down by about half, Then I'll start adding my veggies because we're almost to the finish line at this point. So I just put all that in there. Then I'm going to add in my meat or my ground beef. And then I'm going to start adding my seasonings. And so personally, the seasonings that I add to mine is basically an Italian seasoning. This is one that I make personally, and it's dried. When you're doing dried seasonings, there's not really any rules here. You can pretty much use whatever kind of dried seasoning you want. You could put red pepper flakes. You could put whatever you want. Any flavors that you want. You could even skip putting garlic and onions in it and just do garlic and onion powders. But I'm doing one that has oregano, parsley, and basil all dried. I put a decent amount in there. I'm going to put a pretty good amount of salt and pepper in it as well. The recipe does have actual measurements for the seasonings if you want to follow that, but personally, when it comes to seasoning and canning, it's really not for safety, it's for taste. Even the salt in some of like the pickling recipes or the sugar in some of the jam recipes, it's not for safety, it's usually for taste, to hold more nutrients longer, or to make the jam thicker. So that's something to think about. A lot of the times those seasonings are free. Now this one is a little bit different from the recipe too. The recipe does call for sugar, and this is just to help cut the acidity. I do not like a sweet sauce. I am one of those people. I don't want a sweet sauce. I want an acidic sauce. But this can even be too acidic. So I actually will add some sugar, but I don't add just any sugar. I actually add brown sugar because I feel like sugar with molasses, which is all that brown sugar is, really improves the taste of the tomato sauce. I don't know what it is about molasses, but it really takes away that acidity without adding too much sweetness, which is what I particularly like. So if you've added sugar to your sauce in the past and you're like, that's too sweet, or I can taste it, it's weird, maybe try brown sugar, or maybe just a small splash of molasses. I think you're going to see that that's a totally different flavor, and I think it makes it even like a more deep umami flavor to the tomato sauce. I love it. Absolutely love it. That's how I do it from now on. And now what we're doing is I did take these jars and I put them in my Presto electric pressure canner to heat up. And now I'm pouring the sauce into them. So hot jars, hot sauce poured into them. We want everything to be the same temperature when we're canning, whether that's water bath canning or pressure canning. This tomato sauce can be pretty greasy, and it does have a little bit of that sugar in it, so it can be a little bit sticky. So you definitely want to do a really good job of wiping your jars. And the best way to do that I have found is to get a little paper towel or a little towel and put some white distilled vinegar on it and really wipe those tops off. If you have even the smallest amount of food or oil kind of stuck to the top of that edge of that lid, it's just not going to seal, and it's so heartbreaking to go through all this work and not get a seal. I mean, I guess it's not heartbreaking. What generally happens if it doesn't seal is you just have to put it in your refrigerator and use it up within that week. But I want these to store on the shelf. I'm not ready to eat them right now. This is the Presto electric pressure canner I've been telling you about. It behaves and acts so much like an Instapot. That's why I always recommend it to first-time canners, because if you've used an Instapot or a crock pot, you can use this. It's not so overwhelming. It's not so scary to do pressure canning. Now, I want to be very clear. This canner, this Presto electric pressure canner, is meant for canning, for pressure canning and for water bath canning. It's not meant for cooking food in. It's not the same as an Instapot. An Instapot is not made for canning. So those are some things that you want to consider when you are purchasing your canner. You can go with a manual canner. I've used those for years, but ever since I broke mine, which I didn't even think was possible, but it is. I did break my manual one, and I ended up trying out a Presto electric one and just found it to be so much easier. You don't have to sit there and kind of monitor the pressure or anything. It does all of that for you. So here we are, I let those set for the day, and so I wake up the next morning and I'm cleaning my jars off because they siphon a little bit, right? And it's just kind of gross. So I also take the rings off because when they are going to be stored, if I do have a lid failure, which would be sad and heartbreaking, I want to know that. And the best way to know that is that it will pop off. If you have the rings on, that lid will not pop off. It will unseal and then reseal, and then you have no idea that your food is bad. So you will always see my food sealed. If you want to know more about growing tomatoes in your Florida garden, make sure to pick up my ebook, Homegrown Florida Gardening Guide, at homegrownfloridagarden.com. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys. Happy gardening and happy preserving.